Area hospitals are at or near capacity as we continue to battle the latest surge of COVID-19 cases. Doctors agree this is the result of the highly contagious Delta variant combined with low vaccination rates within our communities. And because August is National Immunization Awareness Month, this presents the perfect opportunity to discuss many of the myths surrounding the COVID-19 vaccines. Joining me today is Dr. Laura Rosch, from the Dean of Kansas City University School of Medicine here in Joplin. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Rosch.
Thank you.
So let's try and clear up some of these misconceptions people have concerning the vaccines.
Oh, that would be my pleasure. And thank you so much, because as a healthcare provider in this environment, you know how important it is for us to help our colleagues that are working in hospitals and in clinics and taking care of people. And you know, we live together in communities, so we want to make sure that we're accountable and that we are supportive of efforts to prevent any sort of disorder that may result as an infection with the COVID virus. And you know, as we've seen the numbers increase in this area, we turn to what is the number one thing that we could do to sort of circumvent some of those complications. And of course, as it was in the past with polio or with the measles or with influenza, we have a wonderful vaccine available, made available to many Americans free, all Americans free, as a matter of fact. And I guess now some of the places don't even need an appointment. You can walk in and get your COVID vaccination, because this effort it's worldwide. It's a global initiative, and it's something that can do much to help prevent some of the course of some of the sequelae of the COVID infection.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us in America, we take for granted the fact that it is free, and it has been given to us all this year. Some other countries, undeveloped nations or developing nations, are just now getting the vaccine.
Right.
So, you know, one of our international students said that her community in Brazil, they are now, in her community, 95%. And they just started getting it.
Wow.
So, you know, they realize how important it is and how it's not really a luxury, you know, and we kind of take it for granted.
Right. And, you know, respect people's right to choose and to make decisions, but to make those decisions with sound evidence and with sound sources, and with keeping in mind that you know, the development of this vaccine didn't just start, you know, this year.
Right.
It's something, as we talked about a little bit earlier, Bonnie, when we were saying, yeah, in the 1960s, they had engineered mRNA viruses, and we're looking at this as a possible solution to global pandemic. So.
Yeah, so that takes us to myth number one. The myth is that COVID-19 vaccines enter your cells and alter your DNA. Talk about that. Why is that just not true?
Well, you know, the science behind the development of the vaccine in no way could enter the cell and alter the DNA. The vaccine itself is a segment of the protein of the virus, and the body mounts an immune response to that. And your own body is actually, your own cells are programmed to create those antibodies that fight against that protein that cause COVID. So, yeah, no, that doesn't happen.
Well, and genetics is such a complicated subject in the first place, how cells work. And I don't think for a layperson they can just, you know, say that it's going to change my DNA and be correct, but yet they keep saying it.
Right. That would be a fascinating technology if they were able to do that. I would have them develop a vaccine to make me taller and smarter and get rid of my wrinkles.
For sure.
They probably would have developed that first.
Right. And so the myth number two, messenger RNA technology used to make the vaccines is brand new. Yeah. And as we discussed, it's not.
It's not. It's something that's been in the books and in the works for you know, over 50 years. And the exciting thing about it is we've seen such massive expansion in the capacity in the other areas of production of a vaccine. Not only the science behind it, but the distribution and the sequencing and the isolation of the virus that they need to create this vaccine against. We're very lucky we were able to create it. Something like the HIV virus, for example, hides in the body. And it's difficult to create a vaccine to that. But I feel like the science just met this at the right point in time, and we're able to we have a tool to prevent a spread and progression of this pandemic. So we live in good times.
For sure. And so myth number 3, the COVID-19 vaccines were developed with or contain controversial substances. Excuse me. What's like a typical ingredient in these vaccines?
These are isolated, as I said. It contains a small protein of the virus itself, and your body will actually create protein in response to the infection from that and create antibodies that are specific for that protein for the COVID virus, and your own body will not. And that's typically how vaccines work. It's not introducing the COVID virus itself. It's not going to create the COVID infection. What it does is it creates a segment of the protein in your body. It relies on your body's ability to mount that immune response, and which brings to the point that's why we have booster shots, because we know in a normal, healthy individual who's able to mount an immune response to that introduction of that foreign protein. Some people, not everyone can do that. Like some of the elderly are not able to do that. Some people who might be immunocompromised with a history of cancer or immunocompromised state might have difficulty mounts. So now we know that the recent recommendations are for a third booster shot for individuals who might not be able to do that otherwise what a young healthy person might be able to do.
And the Delta variant that we're experiencing now, and I've heard people ask, well, how do we know it's the Delta variant? Well, they can tell by how, is it virology? The virology of it, right? That it's bigger, stronger, faster.
It's the history since the beginning of time, right? We have this virus, an influenza virus or COVID virus, and the virus is smart because it realizes, hey, the body's mounting an immune response, they're going to mutate. So what hasn't killed you the first time is going to mutate, and it's going to try again.
Correct.
So just like you get your vaccine every year for the influenza virus, which, by the way, created global pandemics and wiped out complete populations of people.
Spanish flu.
Right,
and
the
things
Spanish
like that.
flu and the things like the COVID, I do anticipate that this will function along similar lines, that it's going to mutate. And until eventually it burns out, which
it might become an annual shot.
Right, you never know what the picture is going to look like. We just hope that we can continue to identify, create some sort of response to it in the form of a vaccine. And as I indicated earlier, not like HIV, where it hides and we're struggling.
Right.
Yeah.
And the booster shots that they're recommending now, I think they said, and that's just a new thing, it's not really surprising because, like you said, and there was a lot of questionable, I guess not questionable, but there's different information coming out. You do need to wear a mask. You don't need to wear a mask. You do need to do this. Don't do this. But it's one of those things that they said, we're not sure. But coronavirus, it's been around for a long time. Not just, COVID-19 is different, but the coronavirus has been around.
Right. Everything in the spectrum from common cold symptoms to, as you see, ending up on a ventilator and destroying your lung tissue. So you have a wide gradient of way that the illness itself can present and the way that virus mutates and presents itself in the human body. We all know that when you speak or when you sing, small particles of spit, sounds gross, but
respiratory
droplets come out of your mouth and go into the air, and you breathe it. People breathe that in, and you can't see it. They're microscopic, they're very small, unable to visualize. So we do know that the mask helps prevent the spread of it. Obviously, you're not in a bubble, it's not completely occluded, but it significantly can cut down the risk of those droplets aerosolizing and the chance for it being spread.
Which is why doctors have worn masks forever, right, in medical settings.
Right.
Because of that reason.
Exactly.
And that wasn't new.
No, that wasn't a new thing.
And I've seen tons of experiments done on news broadcasts or whatever. They'll put a mask on and do the ultraviolet light and how much comes through, masked and unmasked. So it makes complete sense.
Exactly. Sometimes when you watch those crime scenes too with the ultraviolet light, you see the organic substances. Yeah, there's things in the air that we can't see.
Right.
So that's why we wear the mask.
And so one of the things I've heard from some conspiracy theories and those opposed to vaccines is the part about the microchips, which is myth number 4. The COVID vaccine was developed to control the general population, and that they either insert tracking microchips or nanotransducers into your brain.
Wow.
Talk about that. I mean, that's a big,
I'm speechless.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how they would have the technology to create it all. Maybe that would make a great sci-fi plot line. But yeah, no. I think Bill Gates was jokingly referred to that at some conference and mentioned that. But no, that's...
Well, and he talked about some kind of way to track your, like with some type of electronic, method for tracking your vaccine history.
Right.
And college kids, like here at the university, they have to have vaccines to even be enrolled in this school. Your, what is it, the brain one, meningitis. And
sure.
Little kids have to have all their vaccines before they start school. So I'm not sure how this one's any different, or why is it now all of a sudden tracking somebody?
Right. I that's a really good question, and it completely escapes me. If that technology exists, I mean, there are certainly millions of other ways you could apply it.
Cell phones,
You're
we were talking about.
Right. The cell phone's a pretty big nano chip walking around, and they can, follow that. So if you have a cell phone, it's going to happen, and you can bling it from towers, as we were saying. It's so, yeah. No, that
completely
yes,
not
leaves me speechless,
right?
I suppose.
And mass producing a vaccine, wherein then you have to mass produce microchips and do it all at the same time, just seems completely illogical.
Yeah. Well, it makes for good sci-fi, I suppose.
And then myth number 5 is how vaccines affect women. Myth number 5: the COVID vaccine can affect a woman's fertility.
Yeah, no, there's no mechanism, no physiologic mechanism. There's no data, evidence, or anything otherwise to support that it impacts fertility in otherwise healthy women.
Yeah, because fevers can affect fertility, especially in men, right?
Right.
So it's not anything that the vaccine does.
No, it doesn't create that. I mean, some people can have side effects initially from the vaccine. And as I said earlier, in the first month or 2 of the use of the vaccine, even after the clinical trials on thousands of people of all backgrounds to adjust for that, they still haven't identified any significant factors with causing infertility problems.
And vaccine hesitancy, like we were talking, it's not new. There were anti-vaxxers back in the 18th century. That's just a thing that is, manifested and magnified by social media.
Exactly. And, there are instances in our history, not too proud, where the science was used not in a good way, and the data was secretive and not fully utilized. But this is something that's been done globally. I mean, look at other countries. It's had to be completely unmasked and made available to people in Europe and Australia and all over the world, and had to look at it and meet the rigors of those standards. So this wasn't something that was done in just a vacuum. And yeah, we as I indicated, we're very fortunate we had this technology and the ability to produce these vaccines.
And myth number 6, the vaccines actually give you COVID, or you can get COVID from the vaccine.
Yeah, no, the protein that is in it does not cause COVID. It is said earlier, it causes an immune response that can trigger in some individuals. It can trigger inflammation. It can cause low-grade fever. It can cause local site reaction. There is some evidence that it can cause other types of conditions in younger individuals that there is concern. Clotting disorders, inflammation around the sac surrounding the heart can be impacted.
Myocarditis
can also be in younger individuals. The recommendation is still unanimously and hands down that we get the vaccine, because the benefit of having that coverage by your own body far outweighs the risks of not receiving that vaccine.
Yeah, because people who get COVID, obviously not the majority of them don't die, but the long-lasting complications that are still yet to be unknown
Right. There are residuals in younger individuals. It's still known that lung capacity can be affected. Ejection fraction in young athletes is impacted. So the evidence so far, and they've looked at this very carefully because nobody wants to give a vaccine to anyone that they think is overwhelmingly going to be more harmful than impact the overall health of us worldwide. So yeah, that's really important to to consider those, and that's why I think the vaccines, even though we highly encourage them, it is something you should sit down and discuss with your physician. If you have risk factors for certain things, are highly allergic to vaccines or have had anaphylactic reactions and those sorts of things, you need to sit down and discuss with your physician prior to having that. But overall, overarching, the benefits far outweigh, Bobby, anything that might be a problem.
And myth number 7, talking about side effects. The myth number 7 is the side effects of COVID-19 vaccine are dangerous.
Yeah.
Not compared to what COVID
right,
does.
Exactly. And for some people, well, we do know that this is a life-saving vaccine. It saves people's lives. Going out there, vaccinating every day, just as polio we'd mentioned earlier.
Right.
To have the polio vaccine, we know we can have natural immunity against all substances in the environment, but we do know that taking your risk with something like a COVID virus, just as it would be with polio, can have severe ramifications for younger people that might not otherwise have had a problem if they just went ahead and had the vaccine.
Oh yeah. And the side effects vary from person to person. It could be just, like you said, a short fever versus, somebody has, like I had from my vaccine, it was nearly exactly a 24-hour, I felt awful. My hair hurt, my skin hurt, like just awful. But nothing compared to what I felt like when I had COVID.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
And I still can't smell.
Wow.
From it was December.
Wow.
And I'm like, where do I log this so somebody knows I still can't smell?
Well, I hope some of that returns for you.
Yeah.
Because
certain fragrances, like real sweet vanilla fragrance, I can smell. But otherwise, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the mechanisms of the way this virus works are still being studied, and I imagine for years to come they'll be looking at it, neurological implications, cardiac implications, cognitive, right? Cognitive thought processing information's coming out and being made more available. So, yeah, we are lucky we have the opportunity to perhaps derail or prevent, some of the prolonged side effects from.
Yeah, because inflammation causes like untold damage on your body.
Right. Well, when the body's under an inflammatory attack, absolutely. Yeah, you can have problems. And with this virus, we see the effects that it has on the lung in particular, right? And in individuals who already have compromised status in lung function or diabetic or hypertensive, we do know that this population of individuals are at high risk for severe morbidity and mortality associated with that. And so we definitely recommend vaccination.
Right. Yeah. And myth number 8, more people will die as a result of receiving the COVID vaccine than would from contracting the virus. I mean, and I've heard these numbers. People are like, well, there's millions of people that are dying from the vaccine and the government's just hiding it.
Ooh.
I mean.
Yeah, wow.
That would take a lot of
collaboration.
To
pay off a lot of people all over, not just in the United States, but all over the entire world.
And who cares?
Right. It would be, haven't seen that information come out by any reputable source. So.
Well, and it would be hard to hide the fact that, what I say today, 637,000 was the number today of the deaths to COVID, 623,000.
623,000.
And that's just America alone.
Right.
It'd be hard to hide 623,000 deaths from the vaccine.
Right.
When I'm not even sure that would be possible.
Right. Yeah, I don't see how it would be possible either. I think that it is, again, you have to rely on reputable sources for your information and government, but there's also independent groups that put out studies and provide information that can be more reputable and have gone through the rigors of testing. So
Yeah, because you can, and like we were talking, you could Google anything and get 30 different answers depending on where you live, what you believe and have searched before, the algorithms that show you what you want to see on,
exactly,
not just Google, but any search engine.
exactly.
So social media and the internet doesn't make that too much better.
No, and as we gone back earlier when you introduced it, we were talking about children and vaccinations for school and vaccines and hand washing and sanitation techniques in communities have led to increased lifespan more so than any other medication, any scientific procedure has ever done. It's a wonderful miracle that we
the fountain of youth by just being smart.
That we have that available to us. So we do know it saves lives.
And finally, and I only shortened this to 9 because, you could talk about this forever, but myth number 9 is that natural immunity is healthier and more effective than the vaccine.
Well, natural immunity is a wonderful thing. We do know, especially for younger individuals who can mount a good immune response to a virus. Like we used to get chickenpox, for example.
Exactly.
Correct? And we had the body would fight our immune system, but now we know the virus lives in the body and it'll recruit us when you get immunocompromised
Shingles
or stress and shingles. And those kinds of things stay with you for the rest of your life. And so what are the side effects from long-term having a virus hide out in your body? Well, some cause cancer. We do know that. So if we have a vaccine available that's able to help mitigate that and create our own body's immune system, we create a protein that can help prevent invasion of that virus the next time it's introduced into our bodies by our own immune system. It's a lovely thing. So the vaccine is really using your own natural immunity to fight a portion of that protein on that virus. And so just like measles vaccine or polio or influenza.
We wouldn't want to take our chances and just be like, oh, I'll get polio and be fine, develop my own immunity.
Right, a polio party. No,
exactly.
Nobody would want to have that because I grew up in the era where they didn't have my parents and my aunts, I remember them walking around because they didn't have the polio vaccine and they were unable to walk. My aunt had problems her entire life because of polio, breathing. People died from that. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, in Missouri, I read the numbers overnight. Missouri reported 110 deaths overnight, and we were second only in the nation to Louisiana that reported 122.
No.
What can we do to help, I guess, dispel the myths, this show?
Right. The vaccine saves lives. Unequivocally, bar none, we know that it saves lives. We know that it's effective. We know that it's the only way we can really mitigate expansion of this pandemic into our homes and into our communities. So to get the vaccine, to get the correct information, to become educated about it, and certainly, if you have any kind of fear or hesitancy, to talk it over with your physician or to look at the information, if not just for you, but for the fact that if you live in a community or you take care of your grandchildren or you have family members that are in close proximity, having the vaccine will help your own immune system create a mechanism so that the long-term morbidity and mortality can be circumvented and save your life. So, I think, I feel bad that we live in an age where misinformation can be disseminated and it's okay for anybody to post or say what they feel about a situation. But we do know vaccines have been around since, as we said, long time, and that they mitigate these disorders and that they're still recommended by the medical community.
Yeah, and we talked about they've changed over the years. If they figured out that there are some chemicals or something that's in the vaccine, they've removed those and changed them, and they change as needed. Exactly.
If there's a substance in there that they believed is contributing to any untoward side effects from the vaccine or preventing people from having vaccine, it's taken out. It has been taken out. The vaccines now are so much better than they were even 20 or 40 years ago.
Yeah, when I think probably when my son was little, they were still doing the live polio virus.
Right.
And they say don't kiss the baby or handle, without gloves or diapers or whatever. And that has even changed.
Right. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So the science,
and that's just in 25 years.
We keep building on the science and creating more information. But we do know in those past 25 years, even though new drugs have been invented, everything, we do know that by far and away, sanitary techniques, vaccines save lives.
And people put chemicals in their body all of the time. Just, the processed sugar and the processed food and Diet Coke, not to say anything bad about Diet Coke, but, there's chemicals in food and tobacco and things that you just take every day,
Right.
Your medications.
Our environment exposes us to, and as I indicated earlier, chemicals you can't even see. Have you ever wondered where all the waste from a tire goes to, for
Right.
example? It's all in the air and it's broken down and you breathe that in. So, yeah, you're exactly right. We get exposed to many things. Our bodies are an amazing thing, amazing that they're able to recognize and fight it and still survive despite, what it goes
what
through.
we do to it.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming out
Oh, thank
and
you.
helping
Yeah.
dispel some of these myths.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been my pleasure.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And we want to thank Dr. Laura Roche, the Dean of Kansas City Medical School here in Joplin. This is Newsmakers on KGCS TV from the Ruth Copeland Studios here at Missouri Southern State University, and I'm Bobby Potroff. We'll see you again soon.
Always ready, always there. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
If COVID-19 has caused you stress and anxiety, you aren't alone. In fact, stress and anxiety are common reactions after a disaster. The Show Me Hope Crisis Counseling Program offers free, multilingual, and confidential support. Our disaster distress helpline provides immediate crisis counseling for anyone experiencing emotional distress related to any disaster. Call or text 1-800-985-5990 or visit moshowmehope.org. A message from the Missouri Department of Mental Health.